What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another War Thunder video. Today we're going to take a look at the American P-38L. This is a Tier 4 fighter with a battle rating of 4.7 in realistic battles. This aircraft was added in the 1.53 patch, and I have yet to see very many videos on it, actually, from anyone. It's received very little coverage, and I wanted to cover this for you guys. I've gotten, I believe, 2 requests here in the last couple of weeks, and it's time to put this on the channel. You can see in the background I got some B-roll footage rolling, and he even got that new Ghost Army camo put on this aircraft. I think it looks pretty darn nice. But as for the aircraft itself, the P-38L is not your standard P-38. Most of us have become accustomed to the earlier P-38s that were already in the game, the ones that have been there for a year or more. And you tend to fight Japan quite a bit, at least in my experience. You tend to get a lot of Guadalcanal, you get to face a lot of the A6M2s and 3s, J2M2s. But with this plane, you get a little bit of a different airplane. The P-38L comes with the same armament, at least from a gun perspective, as the previous P-38s. You have one 20mm cannon and 4 12.7mm machine guns, all nose-mounted, which of course is great. Unfortunately, the amount of ammunition has not changed between this and the earlier P-38 models. With the cannons, you get 150 rounds. With the machine guns, you have 2,000 rounds. What I find is that this is somewhat limiting to how long you can go in a fight. 150 rounds is not very much for cannon ammunition. And then when you run out of cannons, you're relying solely on your 12.7mm machine guns. And for that, I recommend using universal rounds. In the video that you're going to see a little bit later, I actually use stealth rounds for I try to go for a little sneakier approach. But generally speaking, I would recommend going with the universal belt because they tend to provide more API or armor-piercing incendiary rounds in each belt. And those belts or those API rounds will create more fires in your opponents. And it's those fires that are going to be key to your survival and your success in this game. Aside from those primary guns, you do have two ordnance options. First of all, you can take 2 500-pound bombs, which I generally wouldn't recommend if you're using this as a fighter. And then you have high-velocity aircraft rockets, or HAVARs. You have 10 of those. They are mounted 5 under each wing in a Christmas tree-style hangar. Very interesting looking. Now, as far as the rest of the plane goes, you do get a better engine, I feel, in this. You get the Allison 12-cylinder engine. It's got a lot of power. You can get up to altitude in a pretty good rate once you get this thing upgraded. The plane that you're going to see me fly out is fully spaded. A couple of other things that the P-38L has over some of the other P-38s is it has dive recovery brakes, and it has boosted ailerons. Boosted ailerons allow you to overcome the wind resistance that normally pushes down on the ailerons, stiffens up your controls. If you go into a dive normally, as you increase your speed, you normally find your ailerons lock up because that's just so much air resistance pushing down on those ailerons. So in an attempt to show how much of a difference that this makes, the boosted ailerons, I've taken the P-38J, which does not have boosted ailerons, and I put it side by side with the L version of the P-38, and you can see just how big of an impact that those boosted ailerons give you. And just to be clear, both aircraft are flying at the exact same speed and at the same altitude, and you can see just how much more impressive the L version is in terms of the roll rate. It blows the J version out of the sky. And this is going to come very handy when you're facing German teams, when you're facing Focke-Wulf 190s, which are known for their ability to roll. And speaking of rolling, how about we roll our way right into another match, shall we? How's that for a transition? So here we are, facing Japan of all teams, and we're on Saipan. I've climbed near Alpha, gotten above everyone. Everyone else tends to do the normal thing. You know, they go over near Bravo, and they collide, like almost like an arcade type of battle, you know. Everyone collides, then they all get down into a low altitude furball that descends into absolute chaos. That always tends to happen in realistic battles. I notice RB is more like arcade than I think most RB players like to admit. But all that aside, I'm in a pretty good situation here. I climbed in. My team has basically forced everyone down. They're all in a low altitude turn fight, which is concerning because the Japanese obviously have zeros and A7M1s and 2s, so those are going to certainly outturn our fighters. So I know eventually I'm going to have to work my way down, but I don't want to get down there just yet. I have to eliminate these higher opponents first, or at least force them down. Now, for those of you who are curious, I am using manual engine controls. As usual, I'm using 100% propeller pitch, 82% on my mixture. I am using supercharger gear number 2 since I'm up at altitude, and my radiator has fluctuated between 20 to 55%, just depending on how high I'm running the oil and water. Basically, I fluctuate between wet and 100%, and just depending on what my temperatures are reading, I crank the radiator up or I'll close it a little bit. It's just something you have to play around with, and on Saipan, it's actually not that bad. You don't have to have your radiator open all the time. You might have to change it on, say, Sicily or some of the other maps. Again, it just depends on what you're what you're comfortable with. I try not to use too high of temperatures because I don't want it to burn out of me, obviously. So as far as the game goes, it's pretty much in our hands at this point. We've forced most of the guys low. However, I don't want to get in too big of a hurry to dive on each of these guys. The reason being, the clouds are at a fairly low altitude, and it's very easy for one of these guys to slip past one of us and to climb up into the clouds, and for him to, disappear, use the clouds to his advantage. And before I know it, I'm below him, and all of a sudden I'm dead. It's happened before to me. It's happened before too, I'm sure. So you have to be very close, very careful. So I select this A6M. It's off to the side. He's distanced himself from his teammates, so I know that he should be an easy target. So full whap in hopes of closing in on him. As soon as I get close, he decides to turn, goes evasive. And although you can see I roll very well, I couldn't quite get my guns on target. But that's okay, because my friend in the CORSAIR, the KONE CORSAIR, cleans him up with a pretty quick shot. Those guns on the CORSAIR are just amazing. They're the same guns that are on the Bearcat, and they're just incredible. So as I get over this next target, I notice in the distance a dot. An A7M has slipped past us. I don't know if he was initially below me, or if he was just sort of a late bloomer, if you will, coming into the fight kind of late. Sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they'll be late arrivals. Either way, he's doing me a huge favor by not going after me. I thought he was right here, so I pitch up, and instead he's decided to turn down, and so I'm gonna follow him down. My hope is to catch him focused on someone else, but he instead sees me, pitches straight up in front of me. I did not expect that to happen, so that caught me by surprise. The CORSAIR sees what happened, and he pursues him. I like to turn around and help my CORSAIR, but he's actually got this in the bag. Once I see the A7M1 has decided to turn back around me, and the CORSAIR is still on his tail, I decided to turn off and let him clean him up. And he does it to one quick burst with those amazing 20 mils. Holy cow. There was nothing left of that plane after those 4 20 mils hit him. Just a black streak floating through the sky. Now, both teams have kind of been separated, as often happens on this map. Saipan has two primary runways, Alpha and Bravo. A6M5 down below. I expect him to potentially pitch up after me, so I pitch up, hoping to stall him out if he in fact tries. I initially considered diving on him, but I remember the old golden rule: do not dive on someone when someone can come in after you. So I wait for the Focke-Wulf to come past, and I like to dive on him instead, so that I don't get pinched in between the two fighters. With his teammates starting to dwindle, the Focke-Wulf focuses fire on the CORSAIR, who just manages to dive out of those 20 mils. I like to pursue the Focke-Wulf. Once he sees me firing, he starts rolling. I can match that roll, of course, with the P-38L's boosted ailerons, and I take him out with absolutely no problem whatsoever. The nose-mounted guns are terrific, and you can see that roll rate of the P-38L was able to keep up with that Focke-Wulf without any problems. And that is probably one of the reasons I would recommend this over the J model of the P-38s. The J model has a slightly lower battle rating of 4.3 compared to the L's of 4.7, but to me, the J is just worthless in comparison. I'd rather fly the L any day of the week compared to that. just because of the roll rate, the boosted ailerons or everything. So Key 43 has decided to come in. I initially flew away from him, hoping that he would go after the CORSAIR, and I could use the CORSAIR as bait, and I could come in and get him. So the Key 43 has no interest in fighting the CORSAIR, which kind of surprised me. I figured he would get into a turn fight. A Key 43 is going to outturn a CORSAIR any day of the week. So with this in mind, I decided to close my radiator a little bit and reduce the drag that would normally happen with the open radiator. I closed it to about 17 or 18%. I don't remember, but that allows me to get in there and attack that Key 43 without any troubles whatsoever. And now it's back to Bravo. We have to eliminate these last couple of guys. This Focke-Wulf appears to be attacking guys who are near the runway or on the runway. With my engines being overheated, I decided to cut the throttle back to just 100% and use 100% radiator. I just want to keep you guys up to date as to what's going on with my manual engine controls. And one thing I didn't do is set the supercharger to gear 1. This is actually still in gear 2, so I'm not getting the optimal performance out of my engine right now. And that's something you have to keep in mind when you're flying. If you're using mech, you have to change that, otherwise you're not getting the optimal performance. What I often do is use automatic engine controls when I'm in the fight. I just use mech sometimes when I'm in the fight or when I'm in the climb. And then when the battle starts, I'll just change it to auto and then let the computer take care of it all. Despite the Focke-Wulf being outnumbered and being at the same altitude, you know, he's not using his natural ability to boom and zoom. He's actually managed to take out 2 guys here. He's just taken out the P-51, and here in a minute he's going to take out my CORSAIR friend that I've been allied with here by the game. We're not actual squad mates. We're just, you know, auto squatted. But there he goes. CORSAIR's down. Now it's all up to me to take on their last guy. Focke-Wulf versus P-38. I have altitude. I have everything in my advantage right now. And of course, with the boosted ailerons, I'm able to compete with the Focke-Wulf's roll rate. And speaking of which, as I make my boom and zoom, he starts turning using that roll rate. I just get a couple of hits, a couple of sparks, but he is smoking, burning oil there. Now it's just a matter of can I survive all this flak? As you can see, all the anti-aircraft guns there are firing up after me. Redive. Again, abusing his roll rate as any Focke-Wulf pilot would do, but I can match that or come darn near close to it, and I can take him out for my 3rd kill of the match, and that's game. So with all that being said, let's do a quick summary of the P-38L. It's got exceptional ability to roll. It's got an okay dive rate. Well, here's the problem with the P-38 with respect to the dive. It can accelerate exceptionally quickly in a dive. The problem is its rip rate. The IAS will turn red at 750, I believe, and your wings will actually tear off at 790. Now, 790 doesn't sound too crazy of a number, but trust me, when you have a Focke-Wulf 190 on your tail, chasing you out of the clouds on Norway, like a bat out of hell, you're gonna try to put this plane into a dive, and you're gonna hit speeds faster than you can possibly imagine, because you're gonna be looking behind yourself, and while you're looking at what the Focke-Wulf is doing, all of a sudden your wings have just disintegrated. And you're like, what the hell just happened? Well, you just hit the 790 mark in like record time. This thing dives at just ridiculous speeds, but the wings just aren't strong enough to keep it flying. And that is probably the biggest weakness of this aircraft, in my opinion. Everything else is actually pretty good. The turn rate, the climb rate, the guns, they're pretty good. It could be better. It could have more ammunition. Wouldn't mind having an extra cannon, considering this is a boom and zoomer after all. But all in all, the P-38L is actually a pretty good fighter, and I would recommend flying it over, say, the J model, which is at a slightly lower battle rating. Anyway, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. And of course, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Take care, guys.